Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So we stopped in the last one, we talked about waqf. So waqafna hunak, and now we're going to start up with hiba, which is similar to waqf. Waqf is kind of like we're giving this to Allah, and this is Allah's property, and so then this happens in a certain way according with the conditions. It goes to certain things. But in the hiba, this is giving it to a person. This is giving a gift to a person. That's the basic premises of this, is gift giving. And of course, this is something that's great for someone to do. Giving gifts is something that is of the things that builds love in the hearts of the Muslimin. When we give gifts to other people, and of the things that the Prophet ﷺ he used to do is he would receive gifts and return a gift in return for that gift. So if he was ever given a gift, he yujzi. And so he would like give back a gift that was the same like this to that person, like the same like worth or maybe better. And give it back and give back something to that person later. So this is of another thing. So if someone gives you something, giving it back to them, this is also great. And of course, like hiba, there's certain words like hadiyya, hiba. These are different terms for it, for giving something or giving ownership to something to someone in a complete fashion without anything in return. And so this is the basic concept of the hiba, is giving these things. Of course, it can be anything big and small. He's going to talk about some of the rulings of this. And so the first thing that Abu Shujaa, rahimahullah, he says here in Faslun, وَكُلُّ مَا جَازَ بَيْعُهُ جَازَ هِبَتُهُ. And so he says anything that is permissible for you to sell is also permissible for you to give as a gift. And so, of course, like anything that's not permissible for you to sell, then in this case you wouldn't be able to give it as a gift as well. And this is a basic principle. And so this is, of course, there's some exceptions in this thing, but this is the basic principle. Anything that you can give, you can also sell it as well. And the same thing is if it's not an actual thing, say it's a manfa, you can give this as well. Like, so if you want to give someone a benefit of you sewing something for them or making something for them, this is also a gift in a way. And he's going to talk about the actual rulings of giving and giving these gifts as well, is when does the gift become binding? All right. So anything that you can sell, you can also give as a gift. So of course we talked about something that you can't sell is if you don't own something, can you give this thing to someone else? No. If you don't own something, you can't give it to somebody else. These are the conditions that we talked about for selling something, that you need to own it completely. You can't give them something that you don't own, or that you don't have possession of to give to them. Say it's not in a way that you can actually give it to them. So this is one thing. But the minor differences is we talked about before that someone couldn't sell a couple grains of rice. They can give a couple grains of rice, no problem. There's no problem with giving a couple grains of rice, because it's not like you're actually. That's the minor differences between that and selling. Of course, we couldn't sell a couple grains of rice because we would say there's no benefit in it. But giving it, no problem, because there's no like attachments there. And so the next thing he'll say here, that he says, وَلَا تَلْزِمُ الْهِبَةُ إِلَّا بِالْقَبْضِ. So when, if someone gives something to somebody, when does it become like a final transaction? Because we have to look at this as a transaction. It's the ownership going from one person to another person. When does it happen? So say someone says, I'm going to give you a car. When does that car yours that they're going to give you? They point to the car, that's your car. When is the car yours? When they give you the keys and they put it in your hand and they turn the cord and they actually give you the ownership of the keys and whatnot, and you take the car, that's yours now. Of course, like signing papers, this is something else later, but the car becomes yours when you actually take it into your possession and move it. And so that's when, like, the la talzimul hibatu illa bil qabd. So even if somebody tells you, I'm going to give you this, until you actually take it, it's not yours, and it's still theirs. So if they died before giving it to you, it's still theirs, it's not yours. All right. So until they actually take it in possession, this doesn't complete the transaction until they actually take it into possession. And from the hadith that talks about this is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave a bunch of misk and thalathina awqiyah, which is like it's a big sum of a misk, which is a large amount of misk, which is like musk. This stuff, he gave it to Najashi, and he ended up, when he sent it to him, this large amount. He sent it to him as a gift, as a hadiyah, and then he died before he was able to receive the gift. So then he took it back. And then he gave some of it to his wives, and the rest of it he spread it out as well as like sadaqah. But the fact that he took it back shows that this was not his possession unless he had taken it into possession. So even though he sent it to him, he died before it reached him, and he got it back. And he like gave it to his wives, and also gave it to the people around him. So that shows that this transaction didn't go through as a hadiyah until he would actually have taken it into possession. So this is a key. This is a key point to make in mind. And there's a couple things he'll talk about this as an exception here. So he says, وَإِذَا قَبْضَهَا الْمَوْهُوبُ لَهُ. So al-mawhub lah, this is the person who is given to. And the given to. The person who is given to, mawhub lah. So we have wahaba, and wahab. This is the hiba, is the masdar of wahaba. And the ta marbuta at the end, this is iwad عن الواو فعل الكلمة. So like you have wahaba, and so then the masdar of it is hibatan. And so like that ta, this is instead of the wow at the beginning. So there's some words that are like this, and this is of them usually mithali. So the person who's given to, though, he's called mawhub lah. And then the thing that's given is mawhub, or you say like hiba sometimes, or hadiyah, but that's outside of the tasrif. So this person either qabdaha al-mawhub lah. So if the person who is given to, if he takes it into possession, this gift, lam yakun lil wahib. Then once he takes it into possession, it says lam yakun lil wahib ar-ruju'u fiha illa an yakuna walida. And then he gives the exception here. So he says then the person that gave it to him, he can't go back on this. Once he gave it to him, he took it into his possession, khalas. This is his possession. Now once he took it, it's his. So if I say, I'm going to give you my phone, I'm going to give you my phone, I keep telling you this, but I haven't given it to you yet. Then I finally give it to you, you take it, and I said, no, give it back. No. Once he took it, khalas. And this is, so he can't go back on it. But there's an exception here, he says, illa an yakuna walida. And so there's this one exception is for if the person is his father. Or and he says walida, this also goes for a jad. Or like it goes all the way up the line. It's not just for his immediate father. So if a father gave his kid something, and his kid starts playing with it and whatnot, and the father sees, I want to give it back. I want it back because maybe he sees a good in it. Maybe he sees this is not good for my kid, so I'm going to take it back. There's something else I'm going to do. He's allowed to do this. Or so any father, even if it's not his kid, maybe his kid is grown. He's a grown man, and he gives him something, and he wants to take it back. He can. Of course, he should not take it back without a reason. Like that's makruh to take it back without like a valid reason. But if he's given the gift to his kid, he has the right to take it back. And this comes from another hadith that one of the Sahabi gave. He gave sadaqah to one of his kids to give out for sadaqah, and he gave it to someone who wished he wouldn't have given it to. So he took it back from him. He said, "No, I didn't mean him to give to sadaqah. I wanted somebody else." So he took it back from the person that gave sadaqah, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said it was okay for him, to take it back, and that his son got the reward for giving it. But it's still something that for that person, if he gives it out, like if a father gives to a son, or a jed, or like a grandfather gives to his grandson, he's allowed to take it back. And of course, the difference between him and other people is normally there's a strong bond of love and of care and like oversight that comes from them, and they would know if this is a better thing for them. Like they would usually have the best interest in mind as opposed to other people. So and of course this comes with a couple conditions. Of course, that the kid, that when he if he got this item, if he sold it, then there's no going back for the father. So if the kid sold this item, then there's no going back on the father to take this from him, because he sold it. It was his possession. He was allowed to sell it when he sold it. So this transaction happened, and his father is no longer allowed to go back on it, even if the kid bought it in return. He did another transaction, traded it, and got it back. It's the same item. His father has no right to take it from him because he bought it from someone else. All right, so he cut that. Once he sold it, or he did any tasarruf that put it into someone else's property, then in that case, it isn't, and the father can't go back on it. Or the same thing also is like if the kid owed the father money, he owed him money, and then the father did ibra, which is like he relieved him of that dain. There's no going back on this as well. So if he said, "Oh, you no longer owe me $100," he like once he kept getting a loan from him, he's like, "Oh, give me $5, give me $5, give me $5." He has $100, and his dad one day says, "Okay, I've forgiven you your loan." Then he said, "No, I go back on it." No, there's no going back on that. Once you forgave it, khalas. There's a difference here, and this is like the minor exception. But in general, this is the basis of this is that the father can go back in these things as long as it hasn't changed ownership from his kid, as long as it's still within the kid's possession, as it was given to him, without that. And also, just in regards to giving to kids, there's another note that when it comes to giving multiple kids items and gifts, if all of them are in need of this particular type of gift, then they should give everyone the same thing. Like they shouldn't favor people over another. If they did, then it would be makruh. That's if they all have a need for it. But say one kid, he likes one thing and the other kids don't like that same thing, and he gives it to this one kid, no problem. Some people have said that this is something that's haram, and the madhab of Shafi'i is this is not haram, to give one kid something and not give the other kid something. But of course, this is something that is not good. Especially if it's going to create tension within the kids, then this is not good. But it's permissible, and someone should look out to make sure that if they are giving one kid something that the rest of the kids would love to have, then he should give all of them something, so he doesn't create any division with them. But it's not haram, but it would rather be makruh if he only did one. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So the next thing he's going to talk about is another type of giving, which is different than the first type of giving that we talked about, which is just giving someone something and it's theirs right away. But rather, this is a type of giving where it's called i'mar, or where someone says a'martuka hada, which is that they give this person for the length of their lifetime, and then after that they want it back. And so this is what would be called, like the thing that's given is called al-umrah. And this comes in a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ says, al-umrah mirathun li ahliha. And so this is this hadith is something that shows that this umrah is something that is for the person it's given to, which goes to say that someone who makes this condition in this way, it actually is not looked into, like this condition that I get it back. This is actually going to be considered, like the shart would be considered batil, and it would not be looked into, but rather this thing would be for the person that it's given to. And there's two types of this. One of it is called where a person would say a'martuka hada, which means that this is yours for as long as you live. And then there's another type which is called arqabtu, and so you'd say arqabtu kahada, or which is a different type of the same thing, which means that if you die before me, then this comes back to me, and if I die before you, then it's for you. So it's similar to that, except for in this particular type, you're asking for it to come back. In the first type, you're asking it to come back to you whenever this person dies. And in this one, you're saying if I die first, then it's going to be for you. And so the author here, he says وَإِذَا أَعْمَرَ شَيْئًا أو أرقبه كان للمعمر أو للمرقب ولورثته من بعده. And so he says here that if someone was to do this transaction, the first one he says here, which is إِذَا أَعْمَرَ شَيْئًا. So if he does this, if he says this to somebody and tries to give him this something for that person that he's giving to for the length of his lifetime, and he wants it back when this person dies. In this case, or he does the other type, which is whoever dies first, then it comes back. Then it comes back to me. If you die first, then it comes back to me, and if I die first, then it goes back to you. Both of these, he says, كان للمعمر, which is for the ism maf'ul, that this is for the person that it was given to, or أو للمرقب, or for the person that it was given to in this other transaction, which is that whoever dies first, it comes back to the other one. And so it's either, he says that this is for that person who was given to, وَلِوَرِثَتِهِ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ. So basically he's saying that this condition that was given for this this particular type of transaction that used to be done, which is not a complete transaction of giving, rather this giving will go back to the this gift will ultimately remain with the person that it was given to, regardless of this condition that is there. And this condition is would be considered lahu, or it's something that's not even taken into consideration. And the gift is a gift, and once it's given, and there's no going back on that. The next thing that he's going to go into, he says, فصل وإذا وجد لقطة في موات أو طريق فله أخذها وتركها. And so a luqata is something that is you would say lost and found. It's kind of like lost and found, something that's found, a found item that we don't know who its owner is. You would call this luqata. And so or you say the multaqat as a ism maf'ul. And so this is something that is found and picked up, and we don't know whose it is. It's ما وجد من حق محترم غير محترز لا يعرف الواجد مستحقه. So it's something that ما وجد من حق محترم. So you find something that it should be someone's, and that it's not in a safe place. غير محترز. And so it's not in a safe place. So like, say someone's walking on the street, they find 10 pounds on the ground. So they found 10 pounds just sitting on the ground. Of course, we don't know whose this is, and we don't know who it's supposed to go to, but it's somebody's. It's somebody's. We don't know whose it is, but it's found and it's not in a safe place. So in this case, this would be the luqata. So he's going to talk about what is the right of this and how do we deal with this. So he says if somebody found a luqata and fi mawat, which is like in a deserted place, or tariq, which is like, of course, something that we'd walk through, falahu akhduha wa tarkuha. So he can either pick it up or he can leave it. He doesn't have to do either one of these. Of course, there's certain benefits if someone is fearing that someone else is going to take this thing. Say it's like a high value thing, and the person would really miss it if he didn't see this thing, and he wants to save it for this person, and he thinks that he's trustworthy. He knows himself to be trustworthy, and he's ready for the responsibility to get this back to this person. Then in this case, he can take it. And this is better for him to take it if he fears that someone else worse than him, or like someone that's a fasik or whatever, is going to just pick it up and run with it and not take any, not care at all. So in this case, he can pick it up, and then he's going to talk about the rest of what should happen if he does pick it up. Then what does he do? Or he can leave it, and this is also permissible. It's permissible to leave the thing that you see. And so he says, وَأَخْذُهَا أَوْلَى مِنْ تَرْكِهَا إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى ثِقَةٍ مِنَ الْقِيَامِ بِهَا. So he says here, and taking it is better than leaving it. If إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى ثِقَةٍ مِنَ الْقِيَامِ بِهَا. If he is trustworthy when it comes to like making sure that its rights are taken care of. Like this gets back to the person, and he's going to do what is responsible for him to do when it comes to this. And the next thing he says here, وَإِذَا أَخَذَهَا فَعَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَعْرِفَ سِتَّةَ أَشْيَاء. So then, as soon as he picks this up, if he does pick it up, he's got to know 6 things about this item right away. He's got to make sure he knows what it is. The first thing, وِعَاءَهَا, which is like the thing that the container that it's in. Say it's like a money pouch, the container that this would be in. And then he says وَعِفَاسَهَا, and ifas, وَوِكَاءَهَا. And this is also like the type of string as well. So the first one would be, so the first thing is the wi'a'aha, which is like the type of, it's like the pouch itself. And ifasaha, which is also the type of leather and whatnot in that. And then also wika'aha is the drawstring that you would close it up with. So these are similar things. But basically the point of it is to know what all the descriptors are of this that would change. So if it was like a wallet in this day and age, we'd want to know, is it a leather wallet? Is it not? And what are the characteristics of it? What type, and what's the color of it? And he also says here, what jinsaha, in that like whatever the money is, how much money there is in it, what type of money it is, عددها, how much it is, ووزنها, so like also like in the weight of it. So of course if he takes these, he would look into all of these characteristics, because of course he needs to know right away how much this is, and then if he's going to try to find its owner, his owner would know what it is that he's looking for. And so he would take this up, take these characteristics right away when he picks this up. He says, وَأَن يَحْفَظَهَا فِي حِرْزٍ فِي حِرْزِ مِثْلِهَا. And so then this is the next thing that he would do. After he takes it, then he also needs to save it in a safe place that normally this type of thing would be saved in. ثُمَّ إِذَا أَرَادَ تَمَلُّكَهَا عَرَّفَهَا سَنَةً. Then if he wants to own this thing, say he says, I want this, then what he needs to do is he needs to let people know about it for a year. So he needs to put it out and put word out. There is something that's lost. Of course, he doesn't tell everything about it. He says in a certain way to make sure that someone's stealing that's not going to just pick it up. The person, if he lost it, he would know that this was his. Not to say like, oh, there's this, and then he gives out all the conditions of it that's just giving it away to whoever wants to steal it. But of course, he would keep some of the major sifat to himself, like some of the major characteristics to himself. But he would give some of them that if the person knew who it was, he would know, oh, this is probably mine. Like give the place where it was found and what it was, and something that would hint to what he's talking about. And then the other person, when he comes, he would of course give him he'd give him a test to make sure he actually knows that this was his item. He's like, how much was in it? You don't know how much was in it. What's the color of it? What kind of wallet was it? Was it a 3-fold or 2-fold, and he should know. So it would give him kind of this test to make sure he knows what this is. And of course, this isn't just wallets, but it could be many different things. But so he would need to make it known for a whole year before, if he wants to own it. From the time he wants to own it, he needs to make sure that he lets people know for a whole year that this is that he found something with certain characteristics, so that people have a chance to get back to him in that. And he says, where does he do this? And so the example he gives here is ala abwab al-masajid. So like on the doors of the masajid, he would say, found item kada kada kada. Like, I found this item, this, and so the people that go to the masajid, they'll probably see, oh, okay, there's probably something there. And so this is one of the ways. في موضع الذي وجدها فيه وفي موضع الذي وجدها فيه. So, and also in the place that he found it, he would also need to leave a place there that he found this, or he would have an announcement done there or something. وإن لم يجد صاحبها كان له أن يتملكه أن يتملكها بشرط الضمان. And then if he doesn't find the person, then he can own it with the condition of daman. Which means if this person that was its original owner came at any point in time, he has to give it back to him. And if it was destroyed for some reason, he has to pay him the worth of it. All right? And so this is why, of course, why he takes the original notes when he first gets it. He takes all the notes down about its sifat, so he knows what the worth is at the beginning. So if he does end up taking it after a year, nobody claims it. Yeah, he can use it, he has it, but all of this is on the condition that if the owner ever comes, he gives it to him, or he pays the domain, or like if he doesn't have it, then in this case he would give him the worth of it. So that's the there's no finders keeper, losers weepers in Islam. And yes, there's a certain way. Yes, you can find it and you can keep it with these conditions, but you always have to give it back to him if he ever comes. You always have to give it back to him. This is his property, Any questions so far about this one?
The man is value.
The man is liability.
No.
Yeah. When you say here, he's liable. So any damages for it, he's liable to pay for the damages. Say he got it and it was damaged or something, or say that it was destroyed and is under his hand, then he has to pay the price of it for this person. So he's the one that's held liable for this.
I don't know if it's going to continue to explain, but what if it was like circumstance was like a cash, where you can't, the attributes of it is going to be like every other dollar, or every other guinea.
Yeah.
So how would you go about, because anybody could come, yeah, it was my 50 guinea.
You don't tell him exactly how much, but you would say, where did you lose it? You would say maybe a general place, And you'll say like, where did you lose it? If you know it would have been like a general place, at least where they have it what day. Like have some of these details that you would have. Give them some of it, but don't give them all of it. You know, and sometimes cash, you don't want to necessarily tell them exactly how much. And maybe they don't know exactly how much, but they know like certain details. A lot of times with wallets, a lot of times what kind of cards did you have in it? You know, yeah. But of course, everything has to go back to the people. Alhamdulillah. And so he's going to talk about also luqata in this next chapter. He'll talk about there's different types, because if we were talking about cash, this is one thing. But what if we're talking about animals? What if we're talking about food? That was found. He's going to talk about this in the next chapter. So he says here, Fasl, وَاللُّقَطَةُ عَلَى أَرْبَعَةِ أَضْرُبٍ. And this is like the darb, which it means no'a, which means like type. So it's of 4 types. The luqata is of 4 types. The first type, he says here, مَا يَبْقَى عَلَى الدَّوَامِ وَهَذَا حُكْمُهُ. And so he says, whatever is like the يَبْقَى عَلَى الدَّوَامِ. This is like money. Money, it's always money. You know, it stays this way. It's a certain amount of money, and this is how it stays. Or it's something that's not going to change from time to time. Such if it was gold, or maybe it's a bracelet, maybe a watch or something of this sort. It stays, and that's how it is. This is it. Or it's something the third one. And the hukmah, he says, wa hukmuhu, it's like what he mentioned before, that he talked about. He said the second one, mal yabqa kat'ami ar-ratbi, wa huwa mukhayyarun bayna aklihi wa ghurmihi wa bay'ihi wa hifdhi thamanihi. So, and this is also something that's such as like fresh fruit. Ta'am ar-ratb, which is like, this is something that, some type of food that's going to go bad. So he can either do one of 2 things. First, he's mukhayyar, which means he can choose between, he's put between 2 different options. One, he can either eat it, and then when the guy comes that knows what this thing, he says, oh, this was mine, then he pays the price of it. And that's he says, aklihi wa ghurmi. So he eats it, and then he can pay the price if the guy ever comes. And of course he has to let people know that I found this, that, or the other, and whatnot. And then, or أو بيعه وحفظ ثمنه, or he can sell it on the spot. He can sell it, you know, like he finds someone who wants to buy it, he sells it and he saves the money. And then when the guy comes, he gives him the money. He says, oh, I found your pizza, I sold it for you, and here's your money. It's like, oh man, thanks. Okay, so this is one way to do it, which is say someone found a pizza, because this pizza is only going to be good for the time that's hot. So if you sold the pizza, you can save the money. You save this person's money for him, and he can get the money when he comes. Alright. And of course, it's not, you don't have to put like those $5 in a box or something. You know, you just give him $5 when he comes. Yeah. And so the third thing that he says here is wathalithu, of the 4 types, the 4 types of things. So we have like fresh food, or like wet food. In the way he says ratb, which is like fresh food. He says athalithu ma yabqa bi'ilajin karratbi. فيفعل فيه ما فيه المصلحة من بيعه وحفظ ثمنه أو تجفيفه وحفظه. So what if you found dates? You found wet dates, like or like fresh dates. You found fresh dates or fresh raisins, or fresh fruit. So here, this is something that you could potentially dry it, you could save it, and this person can get exactly what he's looking for. And this is okay. And so he can either do this, he can save it, he can dry it. So he's got dates. He found a whole basket of dates. He doesn't know whose it is, but he dries it and saves it. That basket of dates is for whoever comes. When it comes and it becomes tamar, then he gives it to him and he says, okay, these are your dates that you were looking for. Okay, or the other one, he can sell it as it is and save the price, and save the money from this for the person when he comes. So that's another way of dealing with this. And then the 4th type, if it's not of this type where you can save it in this sense, he says وَالرَّابِعُ مَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى نَفْقَةٍ كَالْحَيَوَانِ وَهُوَ ضَرْبَانِ. So he says the 4th type is something that needs nafaqah, or like looking after, and that takes upkeep and care, such as hayawan, animals and whatnot, livestock. وَهُوَ ضَرْبَانِ. So he says it's 2 types. And there's 2 types of livestock, and he's going to give you these 2 types. The first one, حيوان لا يمتنع بنفسه. And so this first type is a hayawan that can't defend itself. لا يمتنع بنفسه, that he can't stop other people from coming to it, or if he's out in the wild, he can't help himself. Like a sheep. We have a sheep running out in the wild, it's going to get killed by something. Nobody knows how this is going to do. As opposed to like a camel. A camel he's strong and he can defend himself, And so there's a difference between these two, and because the one can defend himself or run away from predators, and the other one is helpless. So if it's the first one, which he can't defend himself, this is what he says here. So فهو مخير بين أكله وغرم ثمنه أو تركه والتطوع بالإنفاق عليه أو ببيعه وحفظ ثمنه. So he can do three. He has three options here. The first one, he can kill it and eat it. All right, so he can kill it, eat it, and then you get the price of this, like it's worth. He saves the price for this, and this is if this person comes and gets it, he'd give him the price of that, and he eats it. He said, "I found it, but I ate it." Okay, there's no problem. The other option is أو تركه والتطوع بالإنفاق عليه. So, or he can find it and then he can give it food and all of these other things. And he says tatawwa, which means or he can leave it, or he can do the with it where he doesn't eat it, and then he would feed it and all these other things, which is going to take work from him. And this is tatawwa, which means that he can't ask this person for a price for what he did. So this was something he did out of his own good favor, and he can't ask that other person to pay him back for all of the food that he paid for this animal. He can't ask him. This is tatawwa. So he's doing this out of his own goodness, and he can't ask this person for it. Of course, if he could have done the first thing and paid him the price of just eating it right up front, so for him to spend all this extra time, we don't know how much he's going to pay, and then to make the other person pay him back for it, when we don't know how long this is going to be, and he didn't agree to him doing this, there's problems with this transaction, because he didn't agree to this transaction of him having to pay for that. But if he does want to do it, that's something that's out of his own goodness that he does, and he pays for it, and then he would give it back to him. Or he could sell it and save the money from it. He can sell it and save the money. This is like for a sheep or something that is weak, some type of animal that's weak and whatnot. And the other type, as he says, وَحَيَوَانٌ يَمْتَنِعُ بِنَفْسِهِ. And so this is something that can defend itself. فَإِنْ وَجَدَهُ فِي الصَّحْرَاءِ انْتَرَكَهُ. So if he finds it out in the wilderness, he leaves it. He doesn't take it. All right, and the reason for this is, of course, these animals, like typically like a camel and whatnot, he defends himself, and if his owner is going and finding for it, he'll probably find it because it's going to stay. It's going to keep running around and doing what he's doing. And he says, وَإِن وَجَدَهُ فِي الْحَضْرِ فَهُوَ مُخَيَّرٌ. But if he finds it in like a actual, he says hadr, which means like a city, or like within city limits, or in a town or something where there's people actually living. In this case, if he finds one of these in this place, then he's mukhayyar in between two things. Like he can choose one of two things. One of it is or three things. He can choose the same three things that we mentioned before. So he can either kill it, eat it, and hold the price for it and pay the price for that. Or he can pay for it, or he can what was the last one here? Or he can sell it right away. He can get it, sell it, and save the price, and give it to the person who's coming. So these are the three things for the person. That's only if he's in a city or in a dwelling, for like something that can protect itself. But if he's in the wild and he finds something that can protect itself, he leaves it. And he leaves it for the person that's looking for it to find it, or for it to find its own home. Sometimes they'll know where to go, so he wouldn't take these things. And there's also a hadith of this meaning that the Prophet ﷺ talked about this of not taking something such as a camel and whatnot. The last thing, let's see here, the time that we have. Yeah, we'll finish this last one because it's connected to this, which is the laqit. And so we're talking about the luqata, which is something that's lost, something. And now a laqit is a person. So it's like we found a kid. We don't know who its mother and father is, but we found a kid. So he says here, Laqit is like a found child. We don't know anything other than we just found this kid. So he says, فصل فإذا وجد لقيط بمقارعة الطريق فأخذه وتربيته وكفالته واجبة على الكفاية. So if we found a kid on the street, he says like قارعة الطريق, which is like in the middle of the street and whatnot, then in this case, someone needs to take him and rear him, and also take care of him in the rest of his life when it comes to like protecting him and teaching him and whatnot. This someone needs to do this, and this is a wajibah, like this is obligatory ala al-kifaya. And as I mentioned before, an kifaya is something that fard kifaya is not looking at an individual as opposed to like salah. We're looking at an individual to come with an act. Fard kifaya is looking for the act to come to be done. We're looking at this act needs to be done. Someone needs to do it. But we're not necessarily looking at individuals here. But of course, someone who's trustworthy, someone who has high status and has the ability to take care of him is like the better of the people to do this, and for him to stand up and take that responsibility of rearing this child. This is very important. And of course, it's something that has to be done. Someone has to do it, and this must be done. And so, a common thing that is said about Islam is that Islam doesn't allow adoption. And this is a problematic statement. The reason why it's problematic is, one, we have like rulings that talk about like found children need to be taken care of, and also all the children have to be taken care of. This is something we all agree upon in Islam. Any child, all of them need to be taken care of. If we don't have a father and mother for them, then somebody needs to take them into their custody and take care of them. That's trustworthy. But as far as the naming goes, their name stays as it is. We don't give them our name. That's the only thing about adoption that we don't agree with. So like when some people say, oh, Islam doesn't do adoption, we take all of the actions of adoption, we do, except we leave their name as it is. Which is actually the worst thing about adoption in America and other places, is the kid will find out when he's like 12 or 14 or maybe he's 20 and he realizes these aren't his parents. Like that breaks a kid, like that does something. I've seen people with this action. Of course, these people like aren't my parents, like they named me McCarthy, something crazy. But this is not in Islam. Okay, yeah, we don't lie to kids, but we take care of them and we put them into families and we make sure that they're reared properly. And this is something that he talks about here, that these people have to be, if we find a kid and whatnot, then we have to pick them up, we have to take them into possession and whatnot, or take him into a family that's going to be proper for him. Of course, this is with the proper legal statuses, of course. And he says here, وَلَا يُقَرُّ إِلَّا فِي يَدٍ أَمِينٍ. And so he says, and you don't let anyone have him except someone who is trustworthy. Ameen. Like this has to be a trustworthy person. So the qadi would never give him to someone who's a fasiq, or someone who's not trustworthy, or that is suspected of like evil doing. This needs to be someone who is trustworthy, that takes this child into custody. And he says, وَإِن وُجِدَ مَعْهُ مَالٌ أَنْفَقَ عَلَيْهِ الْحَاكِمُ مِنْهُ. So, and if he has, like say this kid is found and there's some type of belongings with him, or like money and whatnot, in this case, this would be something that the hakim, like the ruler, would spend on him from this money from it. So he would have it would go to the hakim would take this money, and then he would give him what he needs from nafaqah from this. فَإِن لَمْ يُوجَدْ مَعْهُ مَالٌ فَنَفَقَتُهُ فِي بَيْتِ الْمَالِ. And so if he doesn't have money, then who's supposed to take care of him with the money? Who's supposed to do this? This would be the Bayt al-Mal. Of course, we don't have this in this day and age, so this would be other people that would need to step up and do this and fill up this gap. But in general, this would go back to like the Bayt al-Mal was like a government, Islamic government setup, where they would have money that would be spread out for the common good, for certain things that need to be done, and of those things would be taking care of like the orphans in this, or someone who is found, like a kid without parents in this case. We don't know whether they're alive or dead. So in this case, he would be given that from the government. He'd be given a government stipend to pay for his living and whatnot, if he didn't have money that was to be used. Of course, if he used up the money that he did have, then he would have that as well. And there's a couple other details as well when it comes to this that we'll probably just the last details. If the person actually did like spend from his own, not from the Bayt al-Mal, and whatnot, then this is another thing. He should make recordings of any of the money that he had to spend from his own wealth, because this could possibly be a dain on that person, because he has to pay for him, and someone has to pay.
On the kid or the
Yeah, when he's older. And so you just need to make sure that he takes good records of anything that, like any major expenses and whatnot. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Because of course, like this is, like the rights of the parents when they have a kid. Their kid is supposed to pay for them when they're older, take care of them and give them nafaqah if they don't have the job and whatnot. This is something the kid normally would do. And so there's a benefit for a parent with their kids, as opposed to, like this person's not a parent, so they're not going to have that tie necessarily between them. That is that connecting tie like a parent.
Is that going to also we're going to talk about that, like the fiqh, like the
Yeah, we'll talk about nafaqah. This is the next part. After this, we have a couple more chapters in this particular bab. Then we'll talk about irth. Then we'll talk about nikah, and at the end of it, we'll talk about fasl fi sadaq, and also we'll talk about nafaqah. And nafaqah is also very important. And this is something every single person needs to study well, especially if you have family, and especially if you have kids or a wife and kids. You need to understand nafaqah in this chapter. And of course, if you ever tell your wife, if you ever want to get her to encourage you with your studies, tell her I'm reading bab al-nafaqah. She'll definitely say, keep going, keep going.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.